All right, it looks like everyone in the waiting room has made it into the session. So hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Claire DeMarco. I work in our Academic Training Academy at National University. I'm really excited to kick off today's session. So the topic today, de-dissertationizing your dissertation, the ins and outs of successful academic journal publication. And I had to practice that a few times before we kick things off. And of course, we have the wonderful Dr. Linda Bloomberg here to present today. I will just remind you all of a few housekeeping items before we kick off. Just a reminder that if you have questions, to go ahead and put them in the Q&A. That helps us to keep them a little bit organized. We do ask that with your questions today, just keep them to general questions about publishing, dissertation research. If you have specific questions about your specific topic and how that might lead to publication, definitely check in with your chair, because they know your study not quite as good as you, but pretty well, and can guide you a lot better. So just a little reminder there with general questions, perfect, very specific to your study. You'll probably want to stick with your chair on those type of questions. Just a reminder to stay muted during the session, and that this will be recorded, and we will be placing it on our Skill Up YouTube channel for you to look at later if you'd like to, or share with others, and that link will be sent out after the session. So on that note, I will hand it over to Dr. Bloomberg.
Thanks so much, Claire, and thank you so much for hosting this webinar. I'm going to put myself off camera when I'm presenting so that we can focus on the presentation, and I'd appreciate everybody putting themselves on mute. Today is my first day back at work after 10 weeks of academic leave, so this is a great way to kick off the new second half of the year for me. And I'm thrilled to be presenting on this topic. I feel quite passionate about publication, as some of you know. I think there are a lot of opportunities here for our students and faculty, and I hope to be able to convey some important information in today's session. As Claire said, we are not going to go into questions on individual studies and their publication possibilities. That is something to please discuss with your chair or a publication outlet. Because today we're going to really be focusing on the more general ideas related to research publication. Also, I am going to stop at various points along the way. So Claire, if you will please collect any questions that have arisen in the chat. I'll stop at certain points just to address those questions. And then again at the end of the presentation, which will be approximately 45 minutes in length, we will have a little discussion and question and answers then as well. So once again, thank you, and let's get going. Sorry. Oh, sorry, I just want to okay, there we go. So what I want to say at the outset is that all of our dissertations, mine, yours, all of them, I'm sorry, I'm just getting myself off video here, contain a lot of valuable and rich information. You've conducted a study that has taken months and most likely years to explore your phenomenon of interest, write it up, achieve a successful defense, and then finally have a dissertation of value that is published through ProQuest. So there's a lot of valuable information that really would be a shame to keep in a book on a shelf and not share with the outside world or your community, which could benefit from the findings of your study. So there are a lot of potential content in your dissertation that could lend itself to publication. And this webinar is really geared toward all of those who have completed their dissertations or who are in the process of completing a dissertation, to gain some insights into the differences between dissertation and other scholarly publications, to learn how to tailor your own potential article to meet the requirements and academic standards of a peer-reviewed or open access journal, and also to enhance the clarity and coherence of your article in the hopes that you will actually get published. After all, that is something that you are trying to achieve. Sorry, I'm just trying to work out, Claire, I'm so sorry, without using my mouse, I'm trying to work out the best way of changing. Okay, slides. It's a little clunky at the moment. So what we're here is really all about publication. And with publication, you are moving from student to scholar. Even in your dissertation, you were a student until you defended. You then become an alumni of your university. And a scholar is someone who actually has completed the research and done the writing. So you are already a scholar if you've completed your dissertation. And there are many ways that publications can enhance your academic career. There are a lot of different ways that you can publish or present that can build credibility and recognition for you. This includes articles, research reports, editorials, commentaries, essays, blogs, books, book chapters, guidelines, models, podcasts, presentations, social media, resources, videos, and even white papers. So today we're really going to be talking about journal publication and how to achieve that. And what we're really looking at is a word that I developed when I was writing my book, Completing Your Qualitative Dissertation, is this idea of de-dissertationizing your dissertation. Because remember, you already published your dissertation. It's published in ProQuest, but it's way too lengthy and too detailed to be an actual journal article. Journal articles are much more concise, much more precise, and really focused on one aspect of your dissertation. And that's the key point that we're going to be talking about today, is how to extract from your dissertation something that is relevant and publishable so that you actually can go on to publish something successfully. Now, there are many things you can do with your dissertation or your master's thesis, in fact. And I hope that there are those of you who are on this call who have completed a master's thesis will also consider publishing that, because that is another way that you can get your information out into the broader general public. And really become a published author. So again, everything that we're talking about here is to do with thesis or dissertation publication. So I'm going to be going into each of these aspects separately, but there are 5 key ways that you can actually maneuver your findings and your dissertation or thesis into a publishable article. The first is to extract, where you extract one section and create a standalone publication. And again, I'm going to be going into a little bit more detail on each of these. Secondly, you can condense by distilling key elements into a shorter piece, such as an article or a book chapter. You can expand, where you build upon your work in your dissertation or thesis and expand it into a longer piece. Sometimes a book, but even a journal article would work for expansion. You can adapt by taking a new perspective of your research and adapting it for a new purpose. That is a really excellent way to publish a dissertation, by adapting it to something like a manual, like a handbook, like a model that can actually be implemented. I've had a student that just adapted her dissertation by presenting a model that she developed in that dissertation. It was a dissertation in practice. And finally, you can apply your findings in a practical way. Again, this can be a handbook, a workbook, a training manual, a guide, or even a list of tips. So remember, these are all innovative ways that you can maneuver and manage to channel your dissertation or thesis into a published article. So let's look at each of these separately now. Let's look at the extract, which is the first one. Think about these things. Which part of your academic writing could stand alone? Could it be your conceptual or theoretical framework? Could it be your findings or even one particular finding? Could it be the methods that you used? What can actually be extracted, that is, drawn out of your dissertation, that you could develop into a publishable piece? What part or section of your thesis or dissertation could be tailored for this purpose? So these are some questions to think about when you think about the word extract. Secondly, condense. Look at the main ideas in your dissertation or thesis. Which of these ideas could best fit into the format for an article or a presentation or a book chapter? And how can you edit this so that it fits within the length constraints which are always evident in journal publication? Every journal has requirements for length. And that is something that's really important to consider. And we're going to be getting to that. You have to tailor your dissertation or thesis to fit into what the publisher of that journal is seeking. Third is expand. Is your research up to date? Do you have the latest cutting edge information? Have you done an extra literature review since you completed your dissertation? If not, now's the time to do that. Such a lot of research is coming out on a daily basis. If you completed your dissertation a month or 2 or 6 or 7, 8 months ago, conduct a new literature search. Use your keywords. See what's come out in the world since you defended your dissertation. There may be nothing, but there may be something. And it's really important to expand on your dissertation so that when you publish an article, you have the most up-to-date literature. Remember, if you completed your dissertation in 2023 or 2022, even in 2024, it's already becoming outdated. With each passing day, your dissertation is becoming older and older, and you want to have your journal article as up-to-date as possible. So remember, the most important thing with whatever article you publish is to do that extra literature search to find out what has come out since your defense. Adapting means, where could your work fit? Could it fit in a different discipline? Maybe you've conducted your dissertation in a school of education, but maybe a business avenue could be a potential avenue for publication. Consider all the different avenues that could fit with your study and with your findings. Take a look at your findings with a fresh set of eyes and try and even mentally conduct a different analysis on the data. Where could this fit? Is there a potential home for your dissertation in a completely different venue than you may have studied or completed your studies? And finally is the concept of application. Who could use your findings? How could your findings be used? And what would the audience of the journal need to know in order to use your findings? These are all critical questions to ask yourself in trying to think, where is the best place? Where is the most relevant and appropriate place for me to publish my dissertation and how to publish it? What to actually publish from my very long and intensive dissertation. Look at the guidelines, instructions, and demonstration in journals that'll help you find a place where somebody could use your findings. Often there are small clues in the journal homepages that'll help you and provide you with practical tips to apply your recommendations, to apply your conclusions, and to really spell out your findings in a venue that will make sense to the readership of that journal. So I'm now going to get to the first pro tip that I have here. And once I've stated this, I'm going to open up for some questions. Try and think very clearly about which findings you want to share. Your study had a number of different findings. Which is the key finding or set of findings that you really want to share? Think about that very, very carefully. If you look at the current research in your field, which of your findings are basic and which of them add to the body of knowledge? In other words, which of your findings are really cutting edge that may not have even been spoken about in previous literature? Did you find something completely brand new that will really add to the body of knowledge in your field? Also, look at your literature review. See what other authors have said. See where your study's findings might fit. Again, look at the newness aspect, the innovative aspect. Did your study bring about brand new knowledge that nobody had ever spoken about before or spoken about differently and not exactly the way your study worked out? In other words, imagine that you're writing for a reader who's only somewhat familiar with the body of work in your field, and you need to provide them with key pertinent knowledge that will really help them understand what your study was all about. So prioritizing content is the first key consideration that you need to have in mind as you move forward with the publication process. What content do I want to share? And I'm just going to share the next pro tip, which is as important. Who is your audience? Who do you want to write for? Who reads the journals that you are considering? Choose only the key elements of your research to write about, and then determine who your audience will be so that the readership of that journal matches with what you want to share. And remember, a journal article is not just a summary of your dissertation. It's a synthesis of the key points related to a specific theme or themes or issues or topics that you want to share. I'm going to stop for a moment here, Claire, if you will, just to let me know if there are any questions, and I'm going to put myself on camera again so that I can answer the questions if there are any.
We have a comment. Melody shared that they've created a scoring guide and spreadsheet to help other students who are using the same survey instrument as they did. They say they researched and there was no similar scoring guide on the internet anywhere. So well done, Melody.
Great. So that sounds like a model or like a tool or a resource that was developed that's new, that contributes new knowledge. Am I right? And so that would be a great item to share. That's a great example of something that's worthwhile and something that's worthy of publication.
And no other questions.
Okay, then I will continue. So with all of this in mind, and I know even in the few minutes that we've been talking, that I've been talking, there are a lot of questions that are swirling around in your mind. And so the way I'm distilling this and the way I'd like to portray this is this basic question: what is the best home for your research? And there are two different aspects that go into determining this best home, the best place for you to publish your research. The one is to examine journals by way of journal classification. The second way is to examine articles by way of article classification. And I'm going to go through each of these separately now, starting with journal classification. So firstly, and I'm sure most of you who've been involved in dissertation research and who may have even completed your dissertation at this point are aware of the term peer-reviewed journals. Peer-reviewed journals publish articles that are reviewed by several experts in the field before the article is published. Within the academic community, peer review is an essential component in the academic writing process, and it really is a key component of a high-quality, reputable journal. Journals that are not peer-reviewed are somewhat dubious, and we're going to be getting to that as well when I talk a little bit about predatory journals, which is a key component here that one really needs to understand. Because peer review is a process which maintains integrity by helping to ensure that the papers that are published in the academic journal answer meaningful research questions and draw accurate conclusions. So the peer review process really is focused on the integrity of the research and the academic quality of the writing. And this ensures the overall quality of the article. So peer-reviewed journals generally do take a much longer time to get the process complete because it goes through multiple review rounds. But these rounds of reviews are essential to maintaining a high-quality journal with high-quality articles. Now, another term that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and it's become much more prevalent in recent times, is open access journals. And open access journals are completely reputable as long as they are peer-reviewed as well. In other words, open access means freely available online scholarly information. These often carry less restrictive copyright and licensing barriers than traditionally published works, but they are also peer-reviewed if they are a high-quality open access journal, meaning that if you submit to an open access journal, your article will still be peer-reviewed, even though the open access is an aspect of that journal. Does not mean that there is no peer review involved. So remember, there is a directory of open access journals, DOAG, which you can check for a list of open access journals. And although they cannot guarantee that no publisher or journal on their list is predatory, they attempt to include only high-quality journals and publishers. So this is a really important website to check out if you're considering an open access avenue. Open Access Scholarly Publisher Association, the OASPA, is also an excellent site. And remember, you will be getting a copy of this presentation, so you don't have to worry about writing down these names of these associations right now. This association, the OASPA, will check the list of OASPA members for you and see if the publisher is listed. If a journal is not predatory, the publisher will be a member of this association. And finally, there's the Committee on Publication Ethics, COPE. Again, here you can check the list of members, and if a journal is not predatory, the publisher will be a member. So these are all aspects to consider if you are thinking about open access publication. And the only reason that one considers open access, and here I'm going to talk about it, as opposed to traditional peer-reviewed journals, are the following. Firstly, visibility. Publishing your article in an open access journal means that more people are likely to see it because more people will be able to access it. Additionally, your data will be available to educators and the general public, many of whom do not have access to expensive journal subscriptions. So this is a very important point to consider, and it's in the favor of open access journals, is this visibility factor. Now, there's also the factor of prestige. Many academics place more importance on brand name traditional journals to increase their chances of being promoted, gaining tenure, and obtaining funding for grant proposals. Also, many open access journals are newer, and so they have not received their first impact factor. The impact factor, the IF, is a factor that determines the amount of readership that the journal has garnered. So that is something you will also see on every journal homepage, their own impact factor. Now, a higher impact factor is more desirable than a lower impact factor. And unfortunately, because of the newness of open access journals, some of them have a lower impact factor than some traditional journals, such as SAGE journals, that have been around for a long time. Now, speed is the third factor to consider when considering making the choice between open access and traditional journals. Publishing in many peer-reviewed journals will always entail some degree of delay from submission to acceptance and the final publication. Open access journals typically advertise a much more rapid publication process, and this is reflected in their mission statements on their homepage. So again, these three factors, some of them are in favor of open access, some are in favor of traditional, of visibility, prestige, and speed. And these are factors that you will consider for yourself. Everybody has a different preference. So it's not to say that you should choose open access over peer-reviewed. Think about what works for you and what your purpose is in publishing. Do you want this to be a quicker process? Do you want there to be more visibility? Are you very concerned with prestige, etc.? So this is something that you will consider in making that choice. Now, I've mentioned this in the last few moments, and I'm going to mention it again. Predatory journals, of which there are many, is something to absolutely stay away from. You will not derive any benefit by publishing in a predatory journal. Let me explain what these are. And I'm sure that most of you have received emails, because there are multiple emails sent out by journals saying, publish with us. We can get you published in a very short time. We have an excellent review team. We hardly have any review process that will hold you back. We will get this through very quickly. And you know that when you start looking at their homepages, you will be able to identify which are predatory journals and detect the red flags. And I'm going to go through this briefly because it really is important to know. Predatory journals do not follow standard publishing practices. They do not have robust peer review and editorial services. They are not indexed in the reputable search systems like some of the ones I mentioned previously in the open access slide that I presented. They do not offer quality control. They do not offer indexing or licensing, which is routine for legitimate publishers. In other words, they won't license your article, they won't index it, and your article will probably go nowhere because it will not even be promoted or marketed properly. They will usually want you to submit a fee, which is a huge red flag. You should not be charged a fee for publication. They will often provide falsified information about their readership and oversight of their journal. They'll promote a much higher readership than there actually is. And they usually will accept any article that's submitted, which if you submit to them, you're then prevented from submitting that article to a reputable journal later on. And that's something really to consider, because an article cannot be published more than once. The same article cannot be submitted to more than one journal. And this is something to remember also very clearly now when I'm going through this. You cannot develop an article and then send it out to more than one journal at a time. You have to do it one by one, because only once can an article be published. And the ways to identify a predatory journal and detect the red flags are as follows. Always check the journal website, whatever journal you're considering. Verify the journal's email address. Is it legitimate or does it look like spam? Check if the journal is a member of the reputable publishing council, which will be stated very clearly on their homepage. Check the journal's contact information and editorial board. Does it look legitimate? Does it look iffy? Take a close look at their peer review process and their publication timelines that are offered. If they say they can do it overnight or they can do it in a week, you know there's something a little strange going on, because no journal can be published in that short of a time. Read past issues of that journal to determine credibility. That's an excellent way to detect if this is a predatory or a legitimate journal. Look at their past publications. Look at the quality of articles that they're putting out. And very importantly, practice the pause. Resist the desire to publish quickly and easily. Publication is not a quick over and done process. It takes time, just as your dissertation took time to complete and successfully be defended. It didn't happen overnight. You know how long it took you to engage in the research, to develop your study, to actually conduct the analysis, to write it all up. So publication in a journal is the same. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a process that needs to be followed and really understood in a lot of its detail. So now that we've discussed journal classification, I'm going to stop before I talk about article classification, because this is the next level. And Claire, I want to ask you if there are any questions right now.
There are not any questions, but Tammy from our library has shared a useful link to learn more about publishing open access articles with Oxford Press journals. So definitely.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Tammy. That'll be great. And I hope that that gets sent out also in the email, Claire, that you send out with this presentation, in case people aren't able to grab it from the chat right now.
Will do.
Wonderful. Thanks, Tammy. Thanks for that. Okay, so now that we've talked a little about journal classification, I'm going to go into what I call the second level, which is article classification, because there are different types of articles. In fact, I think I have 7 or 8 here in this presentation. The first article type is original research, where you present your work within the scope of the journal. There is usually a word limit, 4,000 to 8,000 words. You have to have a structured abstract. You have to have references, tables and figures as it applies. So this is what one would call an original research article, and it would be very well suited to dissertation research, which in itself is original research. Even though you've based your study on maybe previous studies and previous problems, what you've produced in your dissertation is original and unique. And this is why you have this great opportunity to write about it, because it's something that no one has ever researched exactly in the way that you did for your dissertation or your thesis. So original research article is the first type of journal article. The second type of article is a report, where you describe the methods that you use, the data collection methods, the data analysis methods, and you really report on the methodology of your study more than on the actual findings themselves. Again, there are word limits. Usually these are between 4,000 and 6,000 words. An abstract is required. You would also have references, and you could use tables and figures as needed, but usually these are not included because you are not actually presenting findings. So you would use tables or figures if they pertain to the methodology that you used, but generally no tables and figures. So this is the second article type, a registered report. So maybe some of you on the Zoom here today have not actually thought about this, that the methodology that you used in your dissertation is publishable as well. The third article type are the replication or validation studies, where you would carry out another brief study to validate what you've actually studied and then write about that. This is something that's not often done with dissertation or thesis publishing, because you don't really want to redo a study or redo some of your data collection. So this is not really one that I would recommend for dissertation publication. Again, there are word limits. It's a shorter article, which uses, abstract references and table and figures as needed. but I would not really recommend a replication study for a dissertation. It would be good to do with a research study that has been done as a research study, but not a dissertation research study. The fourth type of article is a review, where you would critically review maybe the literature that you use. This is more of a literature review. So you would pick out your literature from your dissertation and write a review, not exactly what you've done for your dissertation, because that would probably be too long, but to pick out an area or a researcher or one of your sources that you think really contributed very significantly to your study and write about that. And again, doing an additional literature search would be essential, even if you published your dissertation or you defended your dissertation a month ago, because so much new research is coming out every day. So if you pick on one aspect of your literature review, use the keywords, the relevant keywords to do this additional literature review and see what there is. So the references, again, would be appropriate based on the literature that you used in your dissertation and any new literature that has come out since your dissertation. The fifth type of article, which again is not really relevant to dissertation research, but I'm using it here in this presentation just to show you all the different article types, is really, again, a systematic quantitative or qualitative synthesis of your research. I think that having conducted either a qualitative or a quantitative study is enough. You do not have to do another systematic review of your research, and that is why I would not really recommend this type of article type for a dissertation publication. The sixth is a meta-analysis, where you would go back to your to your research questions and really delve into these in a more systematic way and analyze your data according to your research questions, even in greater detail than you did for your dissertation. Again, this is a possibility. Some people are keen, and this has definitely been done with a lot of dissertations, to do this meta-analysis on your dissertation. So it's the analysis of your analysis in a way. It involves a lot of thinking and a lot of planning. Again, it may be too much for one to consider for a dissertation study, although it has been done, and a meta-analysis is a very high-level way of publishing your dissertation findings. Sorry, the seventh is a commentary. This is a very short publication, only about 2,500 words. You have a very unstructured abstract. This is really a more informal way of talking about your study. So it's really like an op-ed piece in a way. You're not really reporting on your study as much as a commentary on your study. You write about the study, talk about the implications. It's a more informal way of presenting your findings. Most journals, peer-reviewed and open access, welcome commentaries. So if you are not up to presenting a really formal journal article, and you'd rather do just a commentary on your dissertation or your thesis, that would be perfectly acceptable, and it is considered a publication in itself. And finally, a brief report. Here you describe the original research findings of your study that do not require a full-length paper. You can share the findings on a smaller scale. This is a very, very short, brief report. The word limit is usually between 1,000 and 2,500 words, so it's not like the 6,000 to 8,000 journal article, full journal article. It's a much smaller brief report, and if it's something that appeals to you, this is another option. A really excellent option for those of you who may not be up to writing a full journal article, and you may just want to publish something shorter and briefer. It's all, again, a matter of preference, what suits your needs at this particular point in time. Remember, you could do a brief report now and then a full article later on. The brief report would not be the same as the full article, so this would not prevent you from publishing your article as a full article at a point that you're ready to do so. Okay, so that said, I just want to say that in the world of academic publishing, selecting the right article and selecting the right journal is essential. So if we just focus for a moment on the article type, become familiar with the different article types that I've just gone through, the different 8 types. Learn about the various article types that are commonly published in academic journals. Understand the purpose and structure of these article types. Try and become familiar with the distinct characteristics, purposes, and structures of each of these 8 article types. Think about your target audience and the journal requirements. Become very familiar with how to align your article with the disciplinary norms and journal requirements of a particular article type, and really gain practical guidance for selection. Speak to your dissertation chair, speak to the editors of journals, speak to previous students or faculty or alumni who you know have already published previously, and try and find out some practical guidance from them in terms of selecting a journal or article type. Now, here we're talking about article types. You also have to be very familiar with the journal types. And remember, there are so many thousands of journals out there. So choosing the most appropriate journal is really, really crucial. I just did a search on distance education and e-learning journals, and this is just a tiny little handful of what journals there are out there if you're publishing in this field. I'm just using this as an example. So the point I'm trying to drive home is that selecting the most appropriate journal is also crucial, in addition to selecting the most important or appropriate article type. And so my third pro tip is choosing the correct journal. Look at the reputation of the journal. Make sure that it's not a predatory journal. Think about what article type you're interested in. Here they call it a paper type. Look at the authors and the reference lists of that journal. Look at the aims and scope of the journal, which is listed on every single reputable journal's homepage. Look at their editorial board. Even look at places like LinkedIn to try and find out who the editors are. Are these reputable people? Do they hold a lot of weight? Have they made a mark in their field? Who are the editors? Are they actual real people? Because remember, even with AI, there's a lot of stuff out there we all know that is not actually true in reality. So make sure that these are actual people that have done the work in the field and actually are the editors of this particular journal that you're looking at. And then look at the acceptance rate. What is the acceptance rate of the journal? Do they accept every single article that's submitted to them? Are they more judicious in their acceptance? Try and gauge if this is really a reputable place for your article. Remember, you've gone through the process of completing your dissertation, and if you're considering publishing, you really want the most appropriate place or home for your publication. So doing this work ahead of time, doing all this groundwork, and nobody can really do it for you. This is something that you need to delve into and do the work before you actually A, write the article, and B, choose a journal. Look at the peer review process of that journal. It's also listed on their homepage. Look at their readership. Who reads their journal? What is their audience? Who subscribes to the journal if it's not an open access one? Look at their metrics and their indexing, and look at their funding and institution restrictions. So these are all different ways that you can start preparing yourself to choose the most appropriate journal for your article. And again, on every single journal's homepage, even on the predatory journals, there is what is called about the journal. There's contact information, the editorial team, that is the editor, the acquisition editors, the copywriters are all listed. There are all the policies in terms of the focus and scope, the selection policies, the peer review process, the publication frequency. Is the journal published once a year, twice a year, quarterly, bi-quarterly, etc.? You'll want to know how many times a year it's published. What is their open access policy, if at all? What is their indexing policy? In other words, where are they indexed? Where can people search for the articles in the journal? Is this a reputable place or not to search? They talk about their publishing ethics and best practices, which is extremely important to adhere to. Remember, publishing ethics is usually in any high-level reputable journal considered of the utmost importance. They will really be very focused on whether your study was ethically conducted, whether your journal is ethically written up. Is there anything that will divulge the identity of the research participants or the research site? They'll be very, very focused on maintaining all those ethics, just as the IRB of your research site and or National University's IRB was when they gave permission for you to conduct your research there. There will be information on submissions, whether these are online submissions or in person. Some journals still require you to mail in your your submission and not to submit it online, although most of them are done online these days. There are author guidelines, which are very, very detailed and must be adhered to. There are copyright notices, and there's a lot of other information, including the journal sponsorship, etc. So about the journal is something that you will really examine very, very carefully, and you'll do it with a number of journals, because before you select the one that you think is your top choice, definitely keep your eyes open and the possibilities open with a number of them. But remember, you can only submit to one at a time. So once you've gone through this process of looking at each of the journal's home pages that you're considering, choose the one that you think you're going to choose as your top priority and submit to that one. If you're rejected with that one, you then have a number of other options to fall back on, but you cannot submit to more than one at a time. The submission guidelines, I just wanted to show you an example here, which I copied and pasted, are generally very, very clear and specific. There's the journal mission. You can look at their archives. You can look at all the details that are related to that submission, the word count, the amount of times they publish, etc. So submission guidelines are something that you will study very, very carefully before you make your final choice. Now, before we get to preparing for submission, I just want to stop here again, Claire, to see if there are any questions.
Yes, we do have a couple.
Great.
Matt asks, can you speak to the importance of writing for your audience versus writing for a specific journal in mind?
Matt, hi, good to see you. What I would say is that once you've decided on what you're going to actually write in your article, what you're going to focus on, and then you've selected a journal, the journal has a readership. So the audience for that journal is determined by who reads that journal, and you would then be writing for that audience. I'm not sure if that answers your question. So basically, the way that you structure and tailor a potential article will fit with a particular journal which has a specific readership, which is your audience. I don't mind if you want to come on, Matt, and just ask me now if that answers it, or if I can explain in greater detail for you.
No, that's helpful. I think understanding which step in the process, and it sounds like it's a mixture of both identifying a journal that you would potentially want to submit towards and adapting the article to fit that particular audience.
Right. But the very first step, even before deciding on a journal, is what do you want to write about? Which aspect of your study do you want to pull out and present? Is it your findings? Is it one particular conclusion? Is it your conceptual or theoretical framework? Is it your methodology, the way you went about the study? Is it something brand new that you want to develop, like a model or a handbook or a guideline? And then you would go in and look at different journals and who their audience is. So it kind of works together. But your very, very first step is to decide what you want to actually write about, because your dissertation, not yours, every dissertation is very intense, very detailed. And so you're going to have to distill or extract from that what you want to write about. In the beginning of the publication, where I spoke about extracting, distilling, applying, that should give you some idea of what the steps that you would take to deciding what to write about as a very, very first step in the process. Hope that helps. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. We have one more. If you write a commentary on your dissertation research and then that gets published in one journal, can you then write another type of paper for a different journal?
Absolutely. The commentary is a specific article. And if you then decide to go and write a full report on your dissertation, you absolutely can. So, you could even write a different commentary in a different journal. You just cannot publish that same commentary twice. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Any more, Claire?
Nope, that is it.
Okay. Thank you. I'll continue. So, that said, you're now ready to prepare for publication, for submission. Remember, you've now done all the work that Matt was asking about. What am I going to write about? Where am I going to publish? Which is the most appropriate journal? Who reads the journal, etc., etc. So once you've done all of that and you've actually written your article, you're prepared for your first submission. Anyone can submit. There's nothing to stop anybody from submitting an article to any journal. It's just getting it accepted that is the hurdle. So to prepare for submission, remember, you want to impress the journal editors. You don't want to put them off by submitting an article that's A, not going to fit with their journal, or B, doesn't follow all the submission guidelines in terms of word count, etc., etc. So the first step in being successful is to really understand that journal's submission guidelines and make sure that you follow these 100%. Read and follow the manuscript guidelines very carefully. Make every effort to improve the quality of your article. You can have it proofread, you can have it edited, you can send it off to some colleagues or an academic success center or even an outside editor to make sure that the quality is really high. That means the writing quality, the APA, all of these things are what contribute to successful publication, because a sloppy article, one that has grammatical errors, typos, or APA errors, is most likely to be rejected, and the publisher will say, you know, please fix this up and resubmit. And what you really want to avoid is multiple resubmissions. There are often resubmissions required, and don't be put off by that. Very, very few articles are accepted outright on the first submission, but you don't want to have your article returned to you for a reason of sloppiness, because that just wastes your time and really doesn't promote you in a very good light with the article, with the journal editors. Include in your submission any funding statements if there are. In other words, if your article is being funded, you have to declare this. Make sure that you explain any conflicts of interests, if there are any, and complete an ethics statement if that is required. If an ethics statement is required, you are obligated to complete it fully in order for this article to be considered. And you have to abide by all the research ethics that that journal wants you to abide by. Same as our IRB. Research ethics is central to any type of research, whether it's a dissertation or an article or a book chapter. Ethics is of the highest priority in publishing any work, so that no harm comes to any person or any organization or institution as a result of your study. Now, there are also very, very stringent and detailed AI guidelines for authors, and I've listed these here. I'm not going to go through all of this detail. I'd like you to take a look at it when you receive this presentation, because it's really important, especially in today's day and age with the way that AI has exploded. Most journals will have AI guidelines for authors, and it really behooves you to abide by these if you want your article accepted. So make sure to read all the AI guidelines that are listed in your potential journal. Now, again, submitting your manuscript means one journal at a time, as I've been stressing all along. If you submit to more than one at a time, it's going to be detected and you're going to be doing yourself a disservice, because both journals are going to reject your article outright. And really, you don't want to have that against your name. You want to be a credible author. You want to be a reputable and respected author. And so please be sure to abide by these things, by these rules. If you send in via an online manuscript submission system, make sure that you do it all correctly. Otherwise, it will be thrown back or rejected. And follow all the steps outlined in the journal's platform. Again, I know that I'm repeating myself, but being very, very specific and very, very obedient, if there's the word applies, will really help you succeed. Trying to dodge any of their requirements or not being truthful about anything will really not be beneficial to you. This is another pro tip, and it's something that all of us, I've had this many times. Most journal articles do not get accepted on the first round. Please don't be discouraged. Firstly, if you haven't heard from the journal for a while, you may send a follow-up email at some point just to ask if they are still working on your journal, but don't send it a week later, because these articles generally can take many weeks, even months, for an editor to get back to you. Remember, there's a very high volume of articles that are being submitted to journals every day. And so there are many, many other authors and researchers and students and alumni like you that are trying to get their articles published. So patience is of necessity. But remember, if your journal is not rejected outright, you have an opportunity to resubmit, and the journal editor will ask you why they're asking you to resubmit. There will be specific reasons provided. But unfortunately, it will also happen, and has happened to me and many others, the journal article will be rejected. Either the editor feels that it's not a suitable place for their journal, or they just, for some reason, and they'll give you their reason, that it hasn't been accepted. Maybe it wasn't written to the standard that they require. Maybe it doesn't fit with their mission and vision. But whatever it is, if your article is not accepted, try again. Don't give up. There are many, many journals and outlets available, as I've been mentioning all along. So if it is not accepted in one, try and just regroup, look at the feedback that you were provided with, do some revisions if you can see where the revisions are necessary, and then again, go through the entire process again. Look at all the available relevant journals, try and find another one, maybe the second one on your list. Because remember, if you've done your homework to begin with, you haven't just looked at one journal. You've looked at a couple or more as potential journals. So there should be no surprise. If you're not accepted in the first choice, try and look at your number 2, 3, and 4 and decide what would be a good home and try again. So what I wanted to say was, as you can see with journal publication, and I just want to put myself back, sorry, on my video so that I'm not talking from a void. In thinking about journal publications, you have to plan. Once you start, you've started, and then you do all the work of selecting a specific article type, the work of selecting a relevant set of journals to pick from, then choosing the first one that you feel is the most appropriate and trying to submit to that one. So there's a lot of planning and work involved. Just as with your dissertation, it didn't happen overnight. You know how much time and energy and effort and hard work and setbacks and challenges you encountered in producing your final dissertation or thesis and then defending it successfully. You know that it didn't happen without very hard work. And the same with a journal article. Once you've got a journal article published, you're then a published author, which is really something to be proud of. And once you're at that point, you know that you've put in the hard work. So do the hard work, be prepared for it, and hopefully you will be successful. I know we have 6 minutes left, and this presentation has been a little longer than I thought, Claire, but that's okay. We do have 6 minutes left for any questions and answers and discussions. So I'd like to open it up to all the participants now. And Claire, would you see who may have their hand up and just call the person's name? And I'm happy to try and answer any questions that come up now.
I don't see any hands raised, but I've got a couple of yes/no questions, so that I thought we'd grab those.
Okay.
Does the system catalog how many times your submitted article was rejected?
No.
Okay.
I just want to say this. There's no, as far as I know, there's no evidence online or anywhere that will have a number next to your name of how many articles were rejected. No. Because remember, it's also a confidential process. You're dealing with the journal editors one-on-one. They are not sending out your article to anyone else. They're keeping it in-house with their own reviewers and their own editors. And a rejection or an acceptance is between you and that one particular journal.
Wonderful. If an article is accepted and published on a journal, can you also place it on your own website?
Oh, yes, of course. Once an article is published, you will place it on your website. You can place it on any of your social media. It'll become part of your resume or CV. You will list all your publications on your resume or CV. Like, that's a very important aspect in the academic world, to show potential employers or colleagues what you've accomplished. That is pretty acceptable to have it in those places.
Okay, and I do want to draw everyone's attention to the chat. Tammy from the library has shared a good place to get started for investigating journals.
Thanks, Tammy. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, and then I think we've got time for this question over here. Mark has found several open access journals which require independent researchers to pay several thousand if the article is approved for publishing. They're not indexed as predatory, but just require that payment from authors who are not affiliated with the universities, who have a relationship with the journal. What are your thoughts on those types of?
I'm very like red flagged about that. They might not be listed as predatory journals, but really no reputable journal is going to ask you that, to pay money ahead of time. None. So I would just put those aside and continue looking, Mark. It's not necessary to pay money up front, and no reputable journal is going to do that.
Well, thank you.
Remember also, I just want to say this, with AI, there are so many inauthentic or fake sites out there that may be doing that and may not be listed as a predatory journal. So one has to be extra vigilant these days in doing the homework, looking at the journal homepage, looking at all those aspects that I mentioned, looking at the editorial team, the turnaround time, the acceptance rate, and making sure that it actually is a genuine journal that is actually in existence and not an AI-generated version.
All right, wonderful. I do have one final question and then we'll wrap it up. Justin is feeling like he wants to be really busy and says, if you write 2 different articles at the same time, could you, in theory, submit to 2 different journals?
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. If you're writing different articles, now I actually wrote 3 different articles on my own dissertation with a different focus and a different theme. And I published them in 3 different journals. Now, I didn't do them all at once. I did one and then another and then another. But if you have the energy to start putting out 2 different articles at the same time, then kudos to you. And I say, go for it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody. You will be receiving an email with a link to this recording. I'll also grab the links of the resources that were shared in the chat today. Thank you all so much for attending. Dr. Bloomberg, thank you as always for your expertise. Everyone have a wonderful rest of the day and a wonderful week, and happy 4th of July.
Yes, thanks, Claire, and thanks everybody for attending. Thank you. Bye.